This week's edition of the Coach's Corner podcast, we're going to analyze the latest news and analysis from around the world of sports, mostly the NFL, because guess what? Football season is only a month away, and like you, I'm pretty dang excited about it. So that's coming up very quickly. We're a month away from preseason. We are currently in the month of training camp. That means football is just around the corner, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very excited. We're going to cover the Denver Broncos and Von Miller's current contract negotiation status, where are they at currently at this day and point. Also, what's holding them back from reaching an agreement on a deal. The framework's been offered, but Von didn't accept it. What's the holdup? We're going to analyze that in just a few moments. Also, we're going to talk about how the constantly evolving market for players around the NFL is changing and influencing contract negotiations for other players and teams. Case in point, Fletcher Cox of the Eagles. How has his contract extension that he received affected the Denver Broncos and Von Miller's talks, as well as Doug Baldwin receiving a new deal from the Seattle Seahawks? How does that affect Emmanuel Sanders' contract talks for the Denver Broncos? We're going to analyze that and much more. Also, very sad week around the world of sports. Two legendary coaches have passed away and have left us. We lost University of Tennessee women's legendary basketball coach Pat Summitt passed away after her health took a turn for the worst over the weekend. And Buddy Ryan, defensive mastermind of the 1985 Chicago Bears team, passed away yesterday at the age of 85. Very sad news around the league. Two legends gone. But it's time to celebrate the legacy that they left behind. Obviously, a very great one. The University of Tennessee women's basketball program. And, he's remembered by Mike Singletary, Buddy Ryan is. And the 1985 Chicago Bears, those are still around. And the NFL reflects on this day around that, about Buddy Ryan's passing and Pat Summitt. This is the Coach's Corner podcast, brought to you by CodyRourke18.com. Welcome back to the Coach's Corner podcast, ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by CodyRourke18.com and Dollar Shave Club. Go to dollarshaveclub.com today. Purchase your executive blades, Wooden White Charlies, shave butter, have it delivered right to your door every month or every other month, and enjoy the best shave of your life. Shave time, shave money. And thank you for joining me here today on the Coach's Corner podcast. It's been a while since we had a show. Apologies for that. Been very caught up on the road lately with football, so I have some time off right now. So now let's get down to business, okay? Talks around the NFL. Obviously, the Denver Broncos' main goal this season, off-season, was to sign Von Miller to a long-term contract extension. So Denver franchise tagged him. So currently, if he doesn't get a contract extension, he will receive around $14.23 million under the franchise tag with no guarantees, no security whatsoever. So this goes to debate the whole franchise tag and why players want to get rid of it, because there's no security behind having a franchise tag. And you play on a franchise tag and you get injured, a lot of times you find yourself out of the door and without a career in the NFL. That's just the way it goes, especially determining the kind of injury that it takes. For example, so Von Miller has come out publicly and stated that he will not play for the Denver Broncos if he is not signed for a contract extension. He will not play under the franchise tag for them at all this year. He will sit out. And, you can't really blame him. I saw a lot of people on social media. Anytime Von Miller posts something on Instagram, always talks about how great he is, sign the deal, but then they don't really understand the business aspect of the NFL and what the toll it takes on its players. Realistically, players want loyalty. Players want security. And a franchise tag provides no loyalty, provides no security to the player whatsoever for the services that they do for their team. Von Miller, in 5 years, has racked up over 60 sacks. He wants at least $60 million guaranteed and 3 years of money guaranteed as well. So the agreement is that Denver offered him 2 years guaranteed. He wants 3 years guaranteed rather than 2. And so Denver's got some choices to make. Obviously, the deadline is July 15th for the Denver Broncos and Von Miller to get to an agreement on an extension. Last year, the Denver Broncos were in this current situation with Demaryius Thomas, and on the 15th, they got a deal done kind of at the last minute. However, we've seen in the past before with the Denver Broncos is that, the negotiations at times have failed. Von Miller was one of the key players opposite of Elvis Dumervil in what we call Faxgate, where Elvis Dumervil's agent faxed the contract over, the signed contract from the Broncos over past the deadline. So his contract became nullified and he was able to become a free agent. Denver lost out on him and he signed with the Baltimore Ravens in what was one of the most controversial things that have happened in many years involving a player and an agent. Obviously, Dumervil fired his agent at that point. However, Von Miller means a lot more to the Denver Broncos than Elvis Dumervil did. Elvis Dumervil was a very productive player for Denver. However, it just goes to show, you look back at this last season, you've looked at Von Miller's impact for the Denver Broncos. Overall, he's been tremendous for them. He missed a majority of a season due to an ACL tear. However, his impact has not flourished whatsoever. He came back, didn't seem like he lost a step at all. Jack Del Rio's defensive system didn't really help him because it had him dropping out in pass coverage more so than generating a pass rush. Jack Del Rio would go with a 4-man, 3-man rush at times and have Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware drop back into coverage. You can't really win games like that. You got to let your pass rushers, rush the quarterback. And as we saw, Wade Phillips' system, he came in, changed it, made it the system, got pressure on the quarterback, and we saw Von Miller in the AFC Championship game, 2.5 sacks and interception against Tom Brady in a huge game that took them to the Super Bowl. And we saw Von Miller in the Super Bowl, 2.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. His impact, Super Bowl MVP. Von Miller is deserving of the contract that he wants. Give him the 6 years. Give him the 3 years of guaranteed money of $60 million guaranteed. Give him that injury security that he wants in his contract. He's done it. He's done a lot of growing. He's matured quite a bit ever since he's became under the tutelage of DeMarcus Ware. At one point, we thought Von Miller would be a guy who would fall off the wagon, kind of like how Josh Gordon and Justin Blackmon have. Von Miller was headed down that path, and ever since DeMarcus Ware and Peyton Manning have been on the Denver Broncos, they've really took him under his wing and helped him develop and mature more. So Von Miller is a different person now than he ever has been. He's been very smart. He hasn't gotten in trouble. He's passed his drug test. He's no longer on the drug suspicion list. He no longer has to give tests. He'll get tests randomly throughout the season like every other player that's not on the list. He's done a great job in his community, and he's eligible to become a captain for the Denver Broncos this year if he gets that extension, if he decides to play, but he will not play under the franchise tag. He's looking for a long-term extension that is due to come by July 15th. So the Denver Broncos essentially have 16 days from now to get that accomplished. So, you never know. Things could happen. Reports say they haven't talked in a month. However, there's a lot of different things pending upon that. New things have come to light that have influenced the negotiation process between John Elway and Von Miller's agent. And that is Fletcher Cox, defensive player for the Philadelphia Eagles, received $63 million guaranteed for the Eagles in his deal. And Fletcher Cox he's a pretty good guy. He's a pretty good player, but he's nowhere near the caliber, the talent level, or the productivity that Von Miller is, and he received $63 million a year. Von Miller's camp wants at least $60 million in a third year guaranteed upon signing. Denver offered him $58.5 million guaranteed if he's injured. So the third year of the contract guarantees, really regardless of any injury or if he has one, on the 5th day of a new league year prior to his third season. So the Denver Broncos placed him on the franchise tag. It pretty much puts him in a part where they have no reason to bid against themselves. They pretty much did exactly what Kansas City did with Justin Houston last July. They signed him as a franchise tag player. But the Eagles, the overall deal for Fletcher Cox, the thing that's impacting this whole negotiation is the Eagles agreed to a 6-year, $103 million contract extension with Fletcher Cox. And it really guarantees Fletcher Cox more money than any person that's not a quarterback, and it comes 3 months after the Eagles got rid of Sam Bradford's 2-year, $35 million contract away. So realistically, when you look at all of that, Von Miller is going to say to his agent, I've got better numbers than Fletcher Cox. Fletcher Cox got this much money for these stats here. My stats, my impact on the field are unprecedented. As you can see, the results, the stats, they speak for themselves. The performances in the AFC Championship, the performances in the Super Bowl speak for itself. Super Bowl MVP. He deserves that kind of money. So Denver's got to give it to him. But, as I said before, the whole thing is really hinging upon the Denver Broncos' ability to provide Von Miller with the guaranteed money that he wants, the guaranteed year, the third guaranteed year, that provides him with the safety, security, and peace of mind, knowing that if he gets injured, he'll still make his money. He'll still have his job. He'll still have security, and that's all the NFL players want. A lot of times people want to talk about loyalty in the NFL, but the NFL teams don't show loyalty to its players hardly ever. People always want to talk about that, but the player can be loyal to the team, And this has been a highly controversial thing that we're going to discuss further throughout the year as the season progresses. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to get back to the next topic in just a moment. The NFL is almost here. We are in the month that training camp begins. A majority of training camps begin the last week of July, which is usually July 27th, 28th, 29th, and 30th. Is when camps open for a majority of the teams around the NFL, with preseason games following about a week and a half after the first official training camp practice begins. Denver opens up their training camp and has a preseason game at Chicago on August 11th. That only means that we're only about 5-6 weeks away until we actually get to see football again. And then college football is starting up very soon too. But it's exciting. A lot of this offseason for the NFL has raised a lot of questions. Which teams are going to thrive? Which teams are going to be the surprise teams? Which teams that were good are going to be bad? Which teams are going to be bad that we thought were going to be good? It's the NFL every single year. These new coaches. Obviously, is Rex Ryan in a trial year? That's the question. A lot of people have been discussing that especially after what Jim Kelly said. Jim Kelly said that if Rex Ryan doesn't make the playoffs this year, that he'll probably be fired. Is that true? Bringing in his brother Rob Ryan to help out with the defense, you got to wonder how that's going to be with Rob Ryan's track record. Obviously, it was very terrible with the Saints. The defense that they had was one of the league's worst. So, can Rob Ryan turn around the Buffalo Bills defense that is currently pretty solid? Last year we thought that they were going to be pretty good, and they ended up not being that good at all. So that's the NFL. That's the surprise we're in. Which teams are going to excel. Who's going to be the quarterback for the Denver Broncos? Gary Kubiak hasn't really said much at all regarding this situation. He's been very coy about it. It's obviously between Trevor Simon, Mark Sanchez, rookie Paxton Lynch that Denver took in the draft in the first round. Who do you want as your starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos? Answer that. Tweet me at Cody Rourke NFL on Twitter. Tweet me your answers. Simon, Sanchez, or Paxton Lynch? Who's it going to be? Which rookies are going to make the most impact this year? Obviously, a lot of people are looking at Ezekiel Elliott already as a potential number one candidate for Rookie of the Year. The funny thing about that is games still have to be played. Obviously, Ezekiel Elliott chance more so now that Darren McFadden just had elbow surgery for some freak accident that he had. ALA, Brandon Marshall, and the McDonald's slipping in the bag through a coffee table. Yeah, really hard to believe that. After years, we finally found out the truth. It was a domestic dispute that happened to Brandon Marshall back when he was with the Broncos. Ryan Fitzpatrick has yet to sign with the New York Jets, so Todd Bowles may have to go with Geno Smith or Bryce Petty. It just goes to show a lot of question marks. Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski coming in. Patriots looking good this offseason. They look like they're going to be healthy so far. They're going to get Dion Lewis back, who suffered a torn ACL last year. They're going to have Danny Amendola. They're going to have Julian Edelman back. And they got Chris Hogan at wide receiver now, former speedy guy, one of the secondary targets for the Bills last year. How are the Bills going to do? Which conference is going to be the weakest? Which division is going to be the weakest? And which conference and division is going to be the strongest in the NFL next year? Well, we can analyze this. I think the NFC Least is still going to be very lackluster. The Redskins and the Cowboys, the Giants, and the Eagles. It's always a debated thing. They were the worst conference last year in the NFL, or let's say in the NFC. And then you had the AFC's worst conference was the AFC South with Houston, Jacksonville, Indianapolis, and teams like that. It wasn't very competitive. It wasn't very fun. And Tennessee. It wasn't very fun to watch last year for them. So who's got it? Can the Raiders? The Raiders on paper right now look like they have a pretty good team that could challenge the Denver Broncos. On paper, their defense looks pretty good. However, we've encountered this situation many times in the NFL where teams have these great lineups on paper. However, I think it just goes to show how important the system is in the NFL, more so than the players, because you could have a system in place that's not playing to the strengths of your players, and you're going to struggle. So when you look at everything on paper with the Raiders right now, they look like they have a pretty good shot at being pretty good, obviously, with some offseason additions to that defense. Reggie Nelson, safety from the Bengals, he's over in Oakland. You got Sean Smith, cornerback, formerly of the Kansas City Chiefs, out there as well. And then you got, obviously, Amari Cooper, Derek Carr, Latavius Murray. You got some guys out there on the offensive side of the ball, Crabtree, that could be pretty solid. Could give the Denver Broncos some fits. And we look at San Diego. Obviously, they got Joey Bosa in the draft. However, when I look at that team, I don't think that team's ready. I don't think that team's nearly as good as what they have ever been. Last year was a terrible year for them, and I just don't see them being able to compete for the AFC West this year. I think the AFC West is going to be up in the air. It's going to be a battle between the Broncos, Chiefs, and the Raiders. A division that used to be one of the most joked about divisions across the NFL is now one that potentially could have 3 playoff teams in it. You never know. It all depends. So Denver's got a lot to do. Obviously, questions being who's going to be the quarterback, which rookie's going to make the most impact for the Broncos this year. I think it could be a guy on the defensive side of the ball like Justin Simmons, or I think it could be Devontae Booker, running back that Denver drafted out of Utah. I think he can be a very pivotal key for the Denver Broncos. Kind of reminds me of a hybrid back. He can run like C.J. Anderson, but he's got a little bit of breakaway speed. He's a little agile like Ronnie Hillman. Obviously, I think Denver might go with a 3-back rotation this year. 3-back set. Obviously, Juwan Thompson making the move back to fullback, which gives him the best shot at landing a roster spot for the Denver Broncos. A guy who's really ran and worked his butt off for this Denver Broncos team. Has never really got his chance at running back. However, when he's been on the field, he's contributed. His yards per carry have been great. He's been a great blocker as well. Obviously, tight end for the Denver Broncos, Jeff Herman, former tight end out of Ohio State, who missed his rookie year due to a torn ACL. So far, reports say that he's expected to be a very pivotal part of the Denver Broncos offense. Obviously, got Virgil Green back as well. It's going to be a very helpful thing. Obviously, Denver lost Vernon Davis, who didn't really do much for the Denver Broncos last year after being traded to Denver, signed with the Redskins during the offseason, and then the Broncos released Owen Daniels, a guy who was a big safety net for them last year throughout the season. So the Denver Broncos have a lot going on, a lot of question marks that should be answered by the time we get through training camp after cuts have been made. Who's going to make the final 53-man roster? We'll get into that when that time comes. But which teams are going to contend and which teams are the pretenders? Something we got to analyze every season. So the AFC West shapes out to look pretty impressive. The NFC West shapes out to be pretty impressive as well. Obviously, with the Rams moving to L.A., that's going to bring a new market over there. And you got the 49ers. Can Chip Kelly bring back a rejuvenated Colin Kaepernick to compete in the NFL? The system they ran under Jim Tomsula was very unsuccessul and didn't work and caused more problems than anything. So they look to get back there. Pete Carroll and the Seattle Seahawks, obviously Russell Wilson looking to get back to the form that they used to be, the dominant defense and the offense that was pretty much unpredictable, could score either way. Russell Wilson having had an off year compared to last, and obviously they struggled in the playoffs against the Panthers, found themselves down big early, and obviously offensive line is a huge need for these guys, and they think that they address that during free agency and the draft as well. So will the Seattle Seahawks, without Marshawn Lynch, be able to compete? Who's going to step up at the running back position and provide a little solidarity for that Seahawks team? We'll see. New England, like I said, they're healthy. Right now, they're healthy. That could always change. Kansas City, Jamal Charles returning from an ACL injury as well. What kind of impact will they have? Obviously, now sophomore into his NFL year. It was a rookie last year, Marcus Peters. What kind of impact will he have at the defensive back position for the Chiefs as well? And will Joey Bosa make an impact in the AFC West? Primarily a division built off of pass rushers. Kansas City's got Justin Houston, Tamba Hali, guys like that. Von Miller in Denver, DeMarcus Ware, Shane Ray, Shaquille Barrett. It's going to be interesting, but it looks like the no-fly zone, the Orange Crush defense for Denver is still intact, despite losing a couple guys like Danny Trevathan, Malik Jackson, guys who are easily replaceable. We're going to see about that. It's going to be exciting. I don't know about you guys, but I'm very excited for the NFL to be back. You know, if you're not involved in coaching athletics or playing some sort of sport that involves football, you know, after the Super Bowl, your off season could be long. However, I found myself, caught up with football ever since the Super Bowl ended, coaching at the high school level, coaching with the Gladiators as well. It's been pretty good. So now guess what? You know, my football life is 365 days a year, 24/7. Girlfriend gets upset about that sometimes, but it's the grind. It's the grind. This game is awesome. This game's amazing. A lot of people don't tend to appreciate what this game truly is. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. The NFL season is a month away. Training camp starts this month. Preseason starts in about 6 weeks. It's just one step closer to the NFL season kicking off between the Denver Broncos and the Carolina Panthers in Denver on Thursday Night Football season opener. It should be a good one. The NFL is almost here. Hold on to your seatbelts, and we'll be back in just a moment after our commercial break. You've been listening to the Coach's Corner podcast here on CodyRourke18.com. Be sure to follow the show on Twitter at CodyRourkeNFL, and enjoy the rest of your show. July 9th, UFC 200 hosts one of the greatest UFC cards in possible history with the pay-per-view that they have on July 9th, with the main event being John Bones Jones versus Daniel Cormier, fight number two between these two guys. Also, Brock Lesnar makes his return to the Octagon to take on Mark Hunt. Lesnar sports a 5-3 overall MMA record, hasn't fought in the UFC in a couple of years, and Mark Hunt 12-10-1 in his career, and has a capability of always finishing a fight. So realistically, a battle between Lesnar and Hunt is the brute matchup. You got the obviously main event, Daniel Cormier, John Bones Jones, in a much anticipated fight that we've been waiting for almost a year now. Also, Miesha Tate defends her championship against Amanda Nunes. You got USA taking on Brazil. Miesha Tate, UFC champion who beat Holly Holm at UFC 196, has an 18-5 record compared to Amanda Nunes, who's got a 12-4 record. This should be a good fight between the two. And also, Jose Aldo makes his another appearance since the shocking defeat and disappointment he had at the hands of Conor McGregor in 13 seconds. Jose Aldo takes on Frankie Edgar in an interim title match. I believe the winner of this fight will go on to face Conor McGregor after McGregor has his fight with Nate Diaz at UFC 202 up there August 20th. That's going to be a great fight as well. I can't wait for that one. But Jose Aldo makes his return to the Octagon since December after getting beat by Conor McGregor in 13 seconds. Also, Cain Velasquez taking on Travis Brown. Travis Brown being Ronda Rousey's boyfriend, taking on Cain Velasquez, who's got a 13-2 MMA record. Travis Brown has an 18-3 record with a tie in it. Should be a pretty good fight. And then obviously the preliminary card, you got Kat Zingano making her return since being injured, taking on Juliana Pena. This is going to be a great card. UFC 200 is shaped out. Dana White and the Fertitta family has done a great job putting this card together. If you didn't know, obviously the Fertitta brothers, Dana White, they sold the UFC to a Chinese company. I'm eager to see where the direction of that goes, but the fight I'm most looking forward to seeing, obviously here very soon, will be Conor McGregor versus Nate Diaz, number 2. A lot of times, it's been a long time since, obviously Conor McGregor fell in the third round to Nate Diaz by submission, was gassed out. But then, when you look at the facts, it was a good fight. Two great fighters, two amazing fighters, and they now do have respect for each other. Obviously, they're going to talk leading up to it because that's what they do. They got to sell the fight, but they do have respect for one another after that fight and whatnot. And it's been a while since we've seen Conor McGregor ever since that fight. Obviously, with the whole retirement tweet, the whole play, the negotiations that were ongoing between him and Dana White. For a while there, a lot of us fans were very concerned, very upset, and wondering what's next with Conor McGregor. However, it was just a ploy. Conor McGregor didn't retire. He's back. He's ready. He's training for Nate Diaz, and it's going to be a great fight come August. So stay tuned for that. We're just about a month and a half away from that fight as well. UFC 201 headlines: Robbie Lawler versus Woodley, Johnson versus Rice, July 30th at Phillips Arena as well. So UFC is great. Can't wait for it. A lot of good fights. Now, if you haven't checked out UFC 2 for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, go check it out now. One of the most realistic games that I've ever played. A realistic fighting game. The physics, the contact, the drama, everything in that game is absolutely real. So head over to UFC.com, go to the store, make the purchase, put UFC 2 in your collection book, and enjoy it. Enjoy it. This closest thing you're going to get to UFC until you actually fight it, or unless you're watching it. So, the NBA championship, the NBA finals were won by the Cleveland Cavaliers, who came back from a 3-1 deficit to beat Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and the Golden State Warriors. And a lot of people are looking at it saying the NBA is rigged. You know what? I just want to tell you to shut up. The NBA is not rigged. People who think sports, like football, you think basketball is rigged. It's really not. If you look at it, players still have to make shots. Even if it was rigged, players still have to make shots. Players still have to be able to play flawlessly in a sense. When we look at the way the NBA Finals started out between the Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors, it didn't even look close. It looked like the Warriors were going to run amok on the Cavaliers. They went up big, blowout wins. And then all of a sudden we saw resilient LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers take over. Kyrie Irving, LeBron James took over and brought the series back, forced a Game 7. And then from there, it was down to the wire. The game was never away from anybody. It was a close game throughout it. LeBron James came up with what was an amazing block shot on Andre Iguodala. And from that point forward, they kind of got ahead, drew a foul. LeBron James hit free throws, faked an injury, and they held on to win the NBA championship. So a lot of this, I think, believes put the whole LeBron James isn't good in the NBA Finals. He put up career numbers. It was unbelievable the stats he put. Possibly one of the greatest NBA Finals performances of all time. Him and Kyrie Irving really carried that team to come back to win the championship. And the test, the amount of resiliency that they displayed was phenomenal. It's just more of an inspirational thing for younger athletes to look at, that no matter what circumstances you face, no matter what deficit you face, if you work hard and you believe, you can achieve anything. And that's exactly what they did. I think that puts LeBron James haters at bay. For a while, LeBron James just declined his player option. He turned down $24 million. A lot of people are looking at, he's going to leave Cleveland now. No, this is my prediction. He did that so he can free up some money. He's going to sign a contract for less money than what he had this year. He's not going to get the $24 million player option. He's doing this to bring Dwayne Wade from the Miami Heat up, potentially some other guys, maybe Carmelo Anthony, or to try to lure Kevin Durant to them as well to form some sort of super team. It's no secret that LeBron James and Dwayne Wade were caught talking about if things don't go well, they're going to try to reunite and get it back together. So I see Dwayne Wade coming to the Cleveland Cavaliers this year. So Kyrie Irving, Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, if they could get Carmelo or Durant, could you even imagine how crazy that would be? Also, one thing I want to talk about that's constantly being debated this week or throughout the NBA Finals was about Harrison Barnes. Does Harrison Barnes deserve a max contract? Absolutely not. And I'm going to tell you this, okay? Harrison Barnes has started for the Golden State Warriors the last couple of years, okay? He started in the finals. Andre Iguodala constantly outplayed him. He was the better defensive guy. He stopped LeBron James. He was more consistent on the offensive side of the ball. And Andre Iguodala keeps coming off the bench as a sixth man. So Andre Iguodala made the switch this final series. He ended up starting. Harrison Barnes had one of the worst finals performances in NBA history. Absolutely terrible. Couldn't hit a shot. I can't even remember what his percentage was, but it was under 25%, I believe, shots he made throughout the entire series. And many teams are trying to vie to get him this offseason. Is he worth a max deal? Absolutely not. We talked about the player market. in the NFL. The same thing goes in the NBA. However, some of these teams like Philadelphia or maybe one of these lower teams like Orlando may need a guy like Harrison Barnes, a guy who's better than what they have to succeed. So it's going to be an interesting element there in and of itself. I say he doesn't deserve a max contract. Tweet me your thoughts at Cody Rourke NFL, whether Harrison Barnes deserves a max contract or not from whoever in free agency. He doesn't deserve it, in my opinion. He's not going to get it. I see Dwayne Wade going to the Cavaliers to team up with LeBron James, Kyrie Irving. You heard it here first. I'm gonna save this sound clip so we can go back to it when it happens. And then that way you guys can say, oh, yeah, he was right. So, pretty much, guys, the thing is, I've been really caught up lately coaching. I've been coaching high school football here at Grand Junction High School in Colorado. Very, very blessed to be in the position that I'm in as a teacher and as a coach. The kids I get to work with on a daily basis, they really make me appreciate what I do, and they make me love the game of football even more. As of late, I've been watching Friday Night Lights, the television show again, and I really resonated with me what the importance of being a coach really is. And a lot of people don't understand that. When you ask somebody, what does it mean to be a coach? People will say, to lead the team in a positive direction, and to win games, to teach them about the game. A coach does that, but a true coach does more than just teaching them the X's and O's of a game or a sport. It teaches them how to be better men, better women, better contributors to society. And we lost two legendary coaches this week from the NFL and from the NCAA. Pat Summitt, legendary coach from the University of Tennessee, who has a tremendous record, tremendous championship wins. Her program that she's built over there at the University of Tennessee over the years has been, you can't tarnish it. Her impact, her influence on her players, her demand for excellence and for consistency and for hard work speaks volumes to what that program has become. And they're really going to hurt without her. Obviously, we lost her this week. Her health took a turn for the worse over the weekend. So Pat Summitt has passed away. Very, very sad news. And then on the NFL side, the same day, legendary Chicago Bears defensive coordinator, former Philadelphia Eagles head coach, Buddy Ryan, passed away at the age of 85. And a lot of times, I was watching NFL Network last night and yesterday throughout the day, and he had a lot of recollections from a lot of players on that 1985 Chicago Bears team that went undefeated, that won the Super Bowl, that had probably one of the greatest defenses of all time. Under Buddy Ryan, they carried him off after the Super Bowl win. They carried a defense assistant, somebody who wasn't the head coach. They carried him on his shoulders off the field. Something truly phenomenal. If you haven't seen that, the 30 for 30 on the 1985 Chicago Bears, go on Netflix, ESPN, go watch that. Go check that out now. It's very impressive, very great. And it just goes to show you, that was Buddy Ryan's defense. That was his defense. It was his way. Nobody, not even the head coach could tell Buddy Ryan how to run his defense. He did it his way, and the results proved to be phenomenal. As I was saying, as I get back to it, the NFL Network, they are having a bunch of old players of his call in, most notably Mike Singletary. And he just talked about how his relationship with Coach Ryan was very influential, not necessarily from a football thing, but from a life thing. He demanded excellence. He demanded effort. He demanded 100% effort. Give every effort you have, and at first him and Mike Singletary, they butted heads, but over time Mike Singletary saw it. He saw the vision, and they were close ever since, and he touched base on how he truly impacted him, helped influence him in his life, helped inspire him to be a coach at one point. And and Mike Singletary is now returning as a defensive liaison to a team, the Los Angeles Rams. And he attests many of that to Buddy Ryan. So, I think as somebody who's played athletics myself, who's a coach myself now, when I was in high school, when I was playing sports, I really looked up to my coaches to teach me a lot of things that I didn't know, not necessarily about football, but what could I get from them that could help me in life? And a lot of it was structure, discipline, and responsibility. The influence your coaches have on you is something that can't quite be described. And when you watch the television show Friday Night Lights, Coach Eric Taylor, you can see that. You feel that. If you've played the game of football and you watch that show, you automatically feel like Eric Taylor's your coach, and he's really influenced you. So I just got done watching that show all over again, and it just made me think about, what does it mean to be a coach? It's not necessarily about just the X's and O's of football. It's about, okay, when these kids come into our lives, we only get one opportunity with these kids for maybe 4 years as they are freshmen through seniors. What can we do in between that time to help impact them, help shape them, and prepare them for life outside of football, outside of everything else? When you have to become more responsible, you have bills to pay, you have people to support, you have to provide for your family, things like that. How can we teach them to be good, contributing citizens to society? And a lot of that is, you have to teach them the lessons. You have to teach them how to be disciplined. You have to teach them what responsibility is like. You have to hold them accountable. They may not appreciate you being hard on them, holding them accountable, especially if they're partying all the time. But one day down the road, they're going to look at it and they're going to think, you know what? This person was actually teaching me a lesson, and they may see it when they have kids. They may not realize it till they have kids, and they have to find themselves in that situation. They may look back, Coach taught me this exact same thing. He did this with me, and I didn't see it. So that's why I coach. It's much bigger than the game of football. It's about trying to turn these people, these young generation, into great members of society, people you can be proud of, people who are going to do the right thing, and things like that. So that's what I think what a coach is. To me, I think it's very important. I think it's important that we honor the great coaches in our life. It doesn't necessarily have to be sports, but different things. You can be influenced by anybody, mentor, family member, whatever it may be. Learn the lesson. They've been around. They know their experience. Learn from their experience. Let them teach you the hard lessons. That's what it's all about. That's what life's about. So that's what a coach is. And that'll do it for this week's edition of the Coach's Corner podcast. I appreciate you guys being here with me today, subscribing, listening. Be sure to head over to CodyWork18.com. Click on the Coach's Corner podcast tab in the right-hand corner of the page. It'll take you to a link and archive of all the former episodes, past and present, that we've had. Stay tuned. We're going to be back here next week with another edition of the podcast as more NFL news comes to fruition, more sports news. Excited to announce that I'm going to be on another podcast with a good buddy of mine. We're going to be talking about basketball. It's called the NBA Lounge Podcast. We're going to talk about it, me and my boy John Witherspoon. We're going to be on there talking the NBA from coast to coast, from the West Coast to the East Coast. It's going to be exciting things. So thank you here for joining me here on the Coach's Corner podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Cody Rourke NFL, and stay tuned with the show. Latest news, updates, media, press conferences, whatever it may be, at CodyWork18.com. The following episode is available for download right now on CodyWork18.com. In the right-hand corner of the Coach's Corner podcast section, click on the link, and it'll take you to past and present episodes of the Coach's Corner podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter at CodyWork18 and at Coaches Co Podcast. Tweet us, send us anything you want, and we may be on the show.